Welcome in to Bears Weekly, powered by IGS Energy, a Chicago Bears network production. Bears Weekly is brought to you by Advocate Healthcare, Athletico Physical Therapy, CDW, Connie's Pizza, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Jeff Joniak, a.k.a. the Mayor of Bearsville, and his sidekick, Tom the Surfmaster Thayer.
How about our Bears? 4-2 of the bye week on a 3-game surge where all three phases are playing together. Caleb Williams, terrific, running the offense. The defense, stingy. And now we rest. It's the bye week. This is Bears Weekly right here on ESPN 1000 on the Bears Radio Network with Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer. And our guest this week, Jim Miller, the former Bears quarterback from SiriusXM NFL Radio's Moving the Chains. Spin on the dials tonight, Justin Pottinger. Thanks to our producers, Dan Brilli and Jordan Tretta from the Bears, and the executive producer of the Bears Radio Network, Eric Ostrowski. Tom, a great bye week, hopefully, for everybody, because the Bears are sitting in a good spot right now with the arrow trending up in every aspect of this football team. How do you feel about it post-London as you had a few days to digest all this?
You know, I like it. I'm comfortable with where the Bears are at in this timely bye week that's offered to the Bears when they got some guys they need to get healed up in the defensive backfield. And I think everybody along the way who's nursing a little nick or bruise that we don't know a lot about because it's a behind-the-scenes issue, it gives these guys a chance to reset the dials. But you're resetting the dials in a really positive way because now if you're suffering multiple losses going into a bye week, there's nothing that can be worse than the bye week. Now that you have a chance to reset the dials after such a positive growth experience, and you talked about all three phases, what a week to just get off your feet, pay attention to a little football at your leisure, and go to work.
I think the entire NFC North is getting everybody's attention. You know, it is becoming one of the tougher divisions in football, and I think Chicago is going to have a lot to say about this come the end of the year because, Tom, and you just mentioned it, the offense is starting to get clicking. Here we are going in. They're going to come out of their bye week. They'll be going into week 8, things they haven't accomplished. Granted, they won in London, but they were the home team. They have not won on the road. Washington, that's already flexed. That's going to be kind of a mini primetime game there at the 4 o'clock window. That will be a good test for the Bears, but you want to see this offense continue to ascend. I think we like where the defense is at. Tom mentioned the special teams. This offense has to be humming by week 11, and it looked like it was starting to show signs of life of that.
You know, I kept talking about this almost ad nauseum. People are looking at me like I'm crazy, but I think we all agree when we looked at the schedule, no matter what, it was really going to start at week 11, and it's turning out that way. I mean, not that you're dismissing any of the progress or whatever happened in the first part of the season, but if you were putting yourself in a great position, Tom, entering the week 11, which, again, if you have not followed this, all the division games, a trip to San Francisco, a post-Christmas Day game against Seattle at Soldier Field, these are all going to be very good games. I mean, you're going to have to be really, really good for all of these games, home and away, no matter what.
Yeah, I think when you take everything into consideration, you think of Hard Knocks, you think of the Hall of Fame game, you think of the number 1 pick in the draft. It was never about them. It was always about you. And I think when you started this football season, how is this quarterback going to progress? How is the offense under Shane Waldron going to be able to continue the progress of improvement? And then when you finish the season last year at such a high end on defense, was that defense going to be able to pick up right where it's left off? And all these things now are coming to a perfect intersection. When you talk about week 11, yeah, it's still off in the distance, but there's a couple really difficult games that you're going to have to face before you get to that week 11 that will still tell you a little bit about yourself, your improvement, and where this team is headed.
Yeah, Bears not back at Soldier Field until that New England game in November. So a couple of games here to keep an eye on. Let's look at the injuries real quick. The injury report we do at this time every week of the season. Jaquan Brisker with the post-concussion. Kyler Gordon, hamstring. I don't know what the severity of is, but he was having a all-pro game, Jim. He's having a great season. He had 7 tackles. He was active. He was blitzing. He was slithering through. He was getting behind the line of scrimmage. He's great in pass breakups. Tyreek Stevenson calf during the week of practices in London. Terrell Smith still working his way back. And then Zach Pickens at defensive tackle. All things to keep an eye on as we look forward here. How do you assess the Bears in terms of that? Because the guys who filled in the secondary Jalen Jones, Josh Blackwell, Elijah Hicks, all played very well.
And they have consistently. Every time they played, like Josh Blackwell last year, I thought filled in nicely. So they've got a lot of nice depth there. But like you said, Spidey gets a nickname. Normally guys get nicknames for a reason. All right? That's why they earn their nickname. Spidey, he makes a lot of plays, and he's a talented player. They're going to need him down the stretch. There's no doubt about that. But I would say the secondary would be my biggest concern, because the reason why I say that, look at the receivers in the division of the NFC North. You got Jefferson, Addison, Amon-Ra St. Brown there for the Lions. Jamison Williams is coming off a great game. And then you look at Jaden Reed up there for the Green Bay Packers. They got a good group of receivers, and so do the Bears. So your secondaries matter in this division just due to the receivers and their elite level alone.
Tom, have you seen the numbers on Jalen Johnson? Speaking of the secondary, this is insane. And we saw this in training camp, the elevated play, and he made it clear he didn't want his own teammates to catch a pass. And he's going up against really good receivers. He has allowed one touchdown pass in his last 861 coverage snaps. Wow.
Well,
that's a wow.
One thing about it, when Jim talks about the number of receivers that they've been facing up until this point, they will be going forward, there's a lot of other tempting areas in the defensive backfield to test before you test Jalen Johnson. Is Tariq Stevenson taking that next step forward? Is Kevin Byard still have the feet and the drop ability that he had as a young man, even though he's getting up in years? Is Kyler Gordon a guy that you want to challenge his coverage ability on that nickel corner and stuff? So there's other tempting areas than Jalen Johnson right now. And then he's being complemented by a good pass rush up front that's playing a rotation of 8 guys. And for the most part, on any third and long, second long, they're playing with a fresh group of pass rushers. So I think the front is complementing the back, and the back is complementing the production of the front.
On top of this, Jim, he's allowed fewer than half of his targets to be completed this year. And so a league leading, according to Pro Football Focus, 20.8 passer quarterback rating.
I love how when players, not that he didn't know he was a good player, he adjusted to what he had to get better at. He said, I need more turnovers last year, and he went out and he did it. Look how much more productive he was. That's an elite player challenging himself, and he's continued to get better. Those stats that you just throw out, that's not a mirage, man, because you look at how the running back position is cratered. Where is that money gone? The money's gone straight to the receiver position. The receiver position exploded. Look at the Bears. They got 2 players over $20 million. There's 5 teams right now, actually 6, with 2 receivers over $25 to $28 million. So all that money where the running back cratered is going right into that receiver position around the league.
All right, coming up, Tom and I just did an unbelievable interview with Neil Anderson, the former Bears running back and 1986 first-round pick. We'll hear a portion of that. That's in our podcast this week. That dropped today, actually. Our Sports Etc. podcast, episode 103. Make sure you download that. Check it out. A long conversation with Neil Anderson, Tom's old teammate. When we come back, we'll break down some of Caleb Williams' game from a quarterback's perspective. Jim Miller will have a definite notebook on Caleb Williams, Tom's perspective as well. It's all coming up here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by IGS Energy with Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak, and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio's Moving the Chains. All right, Jim, you the quarterback guru here. So Caleb Williams lit up London. That's what I got to say about that. 6 incompletions. I think 3 of them were throwaways. Yes, the interception he wants back. You put some air on that. That's a touchdown to DJ Moore. But to me, his confidence on things like tight window throws, really high right now. And I guess it's always been, right? And then figuring out when to eject the pocket and not absorb a ton of punishment. It's unlike a running quarterback who's going to maybe seek the contact or take the punishment. That's not Caleb Williams, but he's making teams pay for that. especially when they play man coverage, because when their backs turn, if he sees green grass, he's going to go.
Yeah, you see, at least for me, I definitely felt a much more calmness from him in the pocket this game against Jacksonville. That stretch of the game, I think they went on, it was 21-0, I think is what they went on. The Bears ran
3 straight.
over 30 plays compared to, a single digit to the Jaguars. And he really started to settle in and come into his own. I think we know, and I think we've seen, he can be a pretty streaky passer. He can get pretty hot where he's going to complete many in a row where he's locked and loaded. And I think it's only going to get better. But I like his calmness. He doesn't seem to panic. He's got great command. And I love how his teammates respond to him. That is the key. They have welcomed this young man in. They know what the challenge he's got to overcome. And they are doing everything they can to help him out. So it's been reciprocal, and I think you're starting to see this offense move to where it needs to be by week 11.
Tom, what's got your attention on Caleb?
I wish that we could have a video where all we did is see Caleb's head and his feet. Don't look at the production of the play. Don't look at, what else he's looking at. When you look at that one play, for example, where they had the orbit motion, looked right, looked left, through middle to Cole. But then we had a video before the game that we are talking about in the rotation of Caleb's vision. And I think, to me, for a young guy who's learning terminology, is the most impressive trait of a developing quarterback is the ability, the willingness, and the patience to go from 1 to 2 to 3. And then you look at his foundation, how he's throwing the ball. And I think all those things match in the production and the improvement of a quarterback, I think, that everybody wants to see. And Jim's got a lot more experience in talking about that. But for me, when I watch him look from 1 to 2 to 3, it's super impressive because you can actually see his head move in the progression of the play. So super encouraging.
I mean, he'll go 1, 2, 3 back to 1.
Correct.
And as long as he has the time. And I know, hey, sometimes that pocket's getting awful tight, and sometimes he just has to eat it. But Jim, we talk often. We after the fact, we hear about, that veteran quarterback, and I'm not going to name names, but that veteran quarterback. We had a half the field. He can only do half field reads, and which takes away half the game from you. Defense could really put the screws down on you. This guy, he's a full field read. Every blade of grass can be threatened because you can check the eyes, and the eyes tell you that this is going on, just like Tommy just illustrated.
Yeah, and just what the Bears have put around him, you can't really, as a defense, say, hey, we're just going to shut down this half of the field. They're too talented, the Bears are, offensively. Once you put, whether it's Rome Odunze or Keenan Allen or DJ Moore opposite one another and Cole Kmet in the middle with the running backs, they have to respect everything. And you've got a quarterback who can manage it in a very, very sophisticated system out at USC, and I think he'll continue to get better here with the Bears because he's been exposed to a lot of football by Lincoln Riley. So I don't think any of these concepts are foreign to him, and he's going to continue to get better and better with his internal clock.
These next 2 weeks are going to be the first time in a hostile environment since basically Houston, because Indianapolis wasn't that egregiously loud where it took the verbal commands away from the quarterback. But I think the Commanders crowd, because of Jaden Daniels, and then the Arizona crowd because of Kyler Murray, I think you're going to see a big, a Bear fan support there. But I do think it's going to be that next phase of quarterback control with the silent count.
Now, that word control is the one word that keeps popping into my head, Tom and Jim, because the control at the line of scrimmage, after the conversations with group, that leadership council, players speaking up, offensive coordinator Shane Waldron listening and implementing certain things. He looks like a veteran quarterback up and down the line of scrimmage, that you could hear it in our headset because of the parabolic mic, the changing of the play at the line of scrimmage, not feeling jumpy about the clock winding down, under control, identifying, and then, hey, whatever happens post-snap happens, but pre-snap, unbelievable these last few games, Jim.
Coming out, I had 2 quarterbacks, and he was one, and I'm a big fan of James.
Yeah, I know.
Daniels.
You did love him. Yep.
He's played a lot of football, and I think you just see how settled he is in the command. I remember when I did their training camp this fall, dude, this guy took the whole offensive line. They were going to do a blitz period. He went through every play, every call, every blitz, every audible, who they're hot off, his command of everything.
And you're talking about Daniels.
I'm talking about Daniels. And that's what I feel about Williams. I feel Williams, he's getting there with the command. He hasn't played as much football as Jaden Daniels. We know Jaden Daniels, he's a 5-year player in 2 different systems. And Brian Kelly didn't even utilize him the way he wanted to utilize him down there at LSU. Caleb has a lot of those same traits. He's calm. He's got command of the offense, and nothing looks frantic. To me, nothing looks frantic. Yeah. It's really starting to slow down for him.
That's a good word. Nothing is frantic. Tom, we talk about just getting first downs, right? Playing the point guard position. We hear Eberflus talks about that a lot. Just play point guard. So early on, first couple weeks, first down numbers, not so hot. Now the Bears are middle of the pack, 14th in the league in first downs at almost 20 a game. 3 of the last 4 weeks, they went 26 at Indy, 24 against Carolina, 25 against Jacksonville. Adding to that, they're second in the NFL in drawing 16 first down penalties that, take you out of 3rd and short, 3rd and long, and now you got a first down. And that's, you're causing those penalties, in my opinion, but you guys both played. You tell me if I'm off base on this. You're causing those first down penalties because your guys are getting held in the route or they're getting beat and somebody's pulling them down, or you're doing something to cause a defensive penalty at the line of scrimmage. I give credit to the offense for those 16. Pittsburgh leads the league, but the Bears have 16. That's a big number at this point through 6 games. So they're getting those first downs are really starting to pay dividends.
You look at that one drive where they had 3 penalties by Jacksonville that gave the Bears first downs. The responsibility for space in the defensive backfield, that's a huge requirement of all defensive backs. So when you have experienced route runners like Keenan Allen, you have guys like DJ Moore, and you got the speed of Rome Odunze, maybe the size of Cole Kmet. Once you know that you have a responsibility of space because of how many receivers that they can put in the defensive backfield, then you become a little grabby. You become a little anxious and trying to get yourself in the right position maybe before the pass is delivered. You look at that 1 touchdown pass to Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen had his back to Caleb Williams while he was throwing the football. So you think of how a defensive back is trying to accept those responsibility, or a linebacker against Cole Kmet. That's a lot of space requirement in order to play hands free.
Jim, when you quarterbacked, you can't do it every time, the anticipatory throws, but the trust you had to have in the receivers to let it go before they turn into their route, make their cut. Did that happen on a percentage basis? How many times you think in a given game that you trusted a receiver was going to be where they're supposed to be so you could let it rip before they even get into their break?
Yeah, I think it's about 50% of the time, because most teams, it's going to depend on their coverage too,
sure,
whether they're a man or a zone team, but most teams are going to mix it up quite a bit. So it's going to be 50-50, and depending on the game plan, say how many down the field shots you're taking, that's going to determine it too. That, when you're working during the week where you're talking to Keenan Allen or DJ Moore, hey, I saw this corner on tape. He plays a little high. If anything, I'm probably going to back shoulder you 50% of the time. So just be ready for it, depending on how the technique of the corner. And you talk all those things through, and that'll dictate it. But I think he's got great anticipatory skills, and I think he'll be great versus man as well.
All right, time for a break. When we come back, Tom and I visit with former Bears running back Neil Anderson here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 on the Bears Radio Network.
You're listening to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network.
Calling all Bears fans want unforgettable access to see the Chicago Bears play at Soldier Field this season. While VIP official ticket packages are now available for every home game. Unlock access to exclusive ticket packages that may include entry to in-stadium hospitality lounges, pregame sideline credentials, and the Chicago City Pass. Visit ChicagoBearsVIP.com or call 866-202-5755 for more information. Again, that's ChicagoBearsVIP.com or call 866-202-5755. Don't miss this exclusive opportunity with Chicago Bears VIP. Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer, and Jim Miller with you on ESPN 1000 on the Bears Radio Network. Before we rejoin Jim, Tom and I had a conversation with Neil Anderson, the former Bears great running back from his home down in Gainesville, Florida. Outstanding conversation. Let's listen in to what we learned about where he's at now, what he's been through, what he was as a player. Love the conversation. We think you'll enjoy it too.
Walking out of the locker room before a game started, I asked Walter Payton, I said, Walter, give me some words of inspiration. Why are you still so great? And he snapped his helmet. He said, because I'm not rich. And then one time I asked you, you told me in the locker room, and I don't even know if you remember this, you said, Tom, when I reach this benchmark of finances, I'm going to be done with football. And I don't know if you remember that, but why were you so mature about that decision at such a young guy in your life, and then you're a great business success right now?
Well, you hear some of the stories, even before getting into the league, some of the horror stories about, guys leaving the league having made quite a bit of money, and they leave it and they're pretty much broke. And so, I didn't want to be in that statistic. And so I kind of had a plan that I wanted to play. At that time, the contracts were pretty much standard 4 years. So I thought if I could play 2 contracts, 8 years was what I asked God to bless me with. If I could play 8 years and stay healthy, that would be what I wanted to do. And I figured, being a first round pick, you're gonna make decent money. I mean, obviously. And so you have that first contract, and I thought, and hope that I would do well, and then I would have a big second contract, and then that should, be able to hold me off for, to do other things as far as business and things like that. And the plan, and again, I give the credit to God, because I was able to do well with the first contract, being a first round pick. And, following linemen like yourself, it made life a little bit simpler. And then when I signed my second contract, I think at the time I was the highest paid Chicago Bear player ever at that time. And I think I was the highest paid running back at that time. Now, this is when, we weren't making quite as much money as they are now.
I just looked it up too, Neil. Started 4 years, $6 million you got, which was 1.6 a year. And the average salary now, like the Christian McCaskey's at $16 million. I mean, listen,
exactly.
annually, and I get it. And Tom's, the guard numbers have gone way up. But you guys, right. And I know Tom has said, we've talked about this. Hey, does it ever bother you? And he absolutely not. How could it? But I do. It doesn't
bother me at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people, because some people ask that question often, and I really think that at that point in my life, I was not ready to have that kind of finances. That would have not been good, I don't think, for me. So I think God knew what was best for me, and he took care of me and smiled on me, and I'm very thankful about it. Have no regrets.
When you talk about being a first rounder, you were a first rounder as a running back, and that's where your future was in the NFL. But of anybody I've ever seen throughout the course of my history in the NFL, I've never seen a greater first-round player, special teamer like you were your first year. You were the most amazing flyer on the punt team that I've seen come across the Bears and they have one right now in Josh Blackwell, who does an unbelievable job. So when you look at the history of first-rounders, and sometimes they feel a little bit entitled and they're not going to play special teams and they don't have that in their DNA, but that was a major part of your rookie year DNA. Why were you so great at that before you became all pro in your career?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a funny story, because I didn't realize that when I was given the opportunity to play on special teams, that I was supposed to act like I was entitled, and that was beneath me. And what happened is I went into Coach Dicker's office. It wasn't quite midway through the year yet, but I wasn't playing, and I wanted to get on the field. And he told me, he said, I don't know if you realize, but we've got the greatest running back ever to play this game in front of you. And I say, okay, now my next question was, so why am I not playing? I still didn't understand. So he ended up saying, well, I tell you what, if you want, we'll put you on special teams. I was supposed to say no. That's what he thought. But I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to get on the field. You know, my family, people I know from Florida, my hometown, they're going to be able to watch me. So I was like, okay. So I was put on special teams. I was supposed to be the safety. So the kicker, kick it off, and I'm supposed to hang back. And in case anybody breaks through with my speed that I had, I could go get them. Well, we kick off that first ball, and all of a sudden I go down in this hole. I see it opening up like I'm a running back, but I don't have the ball. So I hit that hole, and fortunately the runner coming through, and I hit him, and boom. And Dicker was yelling and screaming at me because I was supposed to be the safety. Steve Kazar, that wasn't my job to go down and tackle the people. So I had never returned, and I had also never returned any kicks in my career. That wasn't what I did. I just played running back. I wasn't on special teams in college. Well, they got me back there to return a kick. The first kick that I was back to return, if I'm not mistaken, I knew how to run. So I just need to catch this ball. And I'm looking at it. I look it all the way in, and I catch it. And all of a sudden, this whistle blows. I'm on the 1 yard line. I got 1 foot inbounds, 1 foot out of bounds on the 1 yard line. So that's where we get the ball on the 1. I get over to him, and he has a few choice words and a few curse words. And so they decided, okay, well, your job is going to be something simple. You just go get the man with the ball. So when we kick off, my job was one thing and one thing only, to go get the man with the ball. Wherever the ball was, to go get it.
You earned respect of all three phases and the fan base on top of it. Do you know how many special teams tackles you had your rookie year?
Yes, it was double digits because it was the most in the NFL at a flyer position.
Wow.
I was leading the league, and you know, and the I think when it was fun for me because at one game I lined up, I was out wide on the punt team. So same thing. My job is to go down and get him. And one team lined up, and I don't know what team it was, but they lined up and put 3 people out there in front of me.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, I made it. I mean, I'm doing something right. They got 3 people, and on that play, I remember I got a penalty on that play because I really couldn't get away from all 3 of them. So I grabbed one guy's face mask and slammed him to the ground. And then I was off and running.
Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer here with Neil Anderson, the former Bears running back on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
When you first got on the field, you were playing a little bit more fullback than you were playing halfback.
Right.
How much did you hate that?
I really didn't hate it. I didn't want to do it very long. And I understood, I knew who Walter Payton was, before I got there, just great player. And, I think out of respect for him, Coach Dicker and Greg Landry, offensive coordinator, I mean, they somebody had done all that he had done. And what I understood, never complained about, I need to be on a different team. We're not winning and I'm so great. But he was a Chicago Bear. And so, I understood why it happened. And, and they didn't really, at that time, let us just compete to see who's going to get this job. Out of respect and for what he had done, and we were winning. My first year, I got there and we were winning. So, you really had no reason to change like a winning strategy. So, and that's how the special teams came about.
So, all right, the second part of my question is, when you look at the history of Chicago sports, whether it's the next coach taking over for Phil Jackson or the next person to stand in the place of Michael Jordan, you took over for one of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL. The difficulty of that moment How did you look at that? Because you're on the 13th all-time best list at University of Florida. You've had some incredible accomplishments, but for the guy that's taking over for the guy, right. How did that set with you mentally in your career?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I was, just a good straight thinker, if I was a little cocky. I had real serious beliefs in what I could do, and I'm, probably sometimes maybe a little bit too competitive, but that's how God made me. And so, I would kid with certain reporters. They come in and want to know how is it going to be to, fill the shoes of Walter Payton. And my thing is, I think Walter was like a size 10, something like that, 9.5 or 10. And I tell him, I'm a 12. So, I have no problem filling his shoes, and I think I can add a little bit because, you got a size 12. That easy fill that shoe, overflow it. And for me, it was truly, I was really blessed with athleticism and that God gave me. And so, but what I enjoyed, I think the most is, I know some people it's totally work and I get it and there's nothing wrong with it. But for me, I was always just playing a game.
Right.
I was playing the game, making good money doing it, but it was a game and I just wanted to play and to be out there and to have those moments, when the teammates are running out there and they grab you and they're picking you up. That is like, I figure to me, that's life. You can't do anything better for me and with the talents that God gave me in life. So I really just enjoying that. It wasn't about, having to be the best of all time. That kind of stuff had nothing to do with why I played football or anything like that. It was just the camaraderie. I see guys like I get the chance every now and then to talk to guys like Thomas Sanders, and then he's reminiscing about the things that happened in the locker room. And I remember some of those things probably more than I remember any of the game.
Tom, how much fun was that with Neil? On our Bears, Etc. podcast, by the way, 103.
I think there's a new generation of Bears fans that listen to that Neil Anderson interview and get to know him a little bit better. Because when he came aboard the Bears, that he was picked in the first round out of University of Florida to take over for the greatest of all greats, Walter Payton. There's a lot of pressure in that role. And the pressure wasn't too much where he ignored the opportunity to get on the football field as a special teams player. And he was one of the most productive first-round special team players that already had a position designated for him in his production, his commitment, and he's just a quality character. He's the type of guy that you hope that you come across in your locker room life that can not only teach you lessons, but you can also learn something about him just as a quality person. We called him Cuz because he was everybody's cousin. His name was Neil, but his real name is Charlie. And so just the different things that I hope the audience appreciates learning about Neil Anderson.
Oh, yeah, you got to check it out. He's a pickleball king. He loves pickleball. It's just great stories. Trust me, you'll enjoy the podcast. Bears, Etc. podcast, episode 103. All right, when we come back, we'll break down the Bears defense with Jim Miller, Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network. This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by CDW, People to Get It, with Tom Thayer, Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio, moving the chains. All right, we touched on the offense. Tom, I'm going to talk about the defense because they're doing everything that they did at the end of last season. 12 consecutive games holding teams under 21 points. That's the longest streak in the NFL. It means something to these guys. It definitely means something to these guys. Amin Agbangbamiga, blitz sack at the end of the game there, I think that meant something to him to preserve any possibility of that record ending. The Bears were in command, but I just don't think they want that to stop now. This is an identity, and it means something. I talked to Jalen Johnson about it after the game, and he says, heck yeah, this means something to us. We want to show everybody we are dominant defensively.
They are dominant defensively, and they can match up against what their opponent is putting on the field. When you look at that transition, out goes Kyler Gordon, in comes Jack Sanborn, or vice versa. So the Bears have a nice collection of talent that they can match up against the strengths of their opponents. And sometimes they can match up against a vulnerability of their opponent and take advantage of it. So I like the growth and the development of this defense. I think the relationship between Matt Eberflus and Eric Washington are doing a nice job of having these guys prepared week in and week out. You know, the things that we wanted to see before the season started. What is Javon Dexter going to do, and how is he going to grow into the next stage of his career? He's doing a magnificent job. Just like when you got Ryan Poles go out there and get Darrell Taylor. How is he contributing to the pass rush? He's doing a great job. So all those matchup responsibilities that a defense has to have against these modern-day offenses, they have a collection of personnel that can do it.
Yeah, they have been outstanding. And I like what Tom just said about the trading for Darrell Taylor. There was all that talk that we talked about, hey, they need another edge rusher. That guy comes in right away and gets a sack, had an instant impact for this defense. And I just think for them defensively, they've got the depth. They've got the good rotation. Like you said, the coach is being more aggressive because of the lack of sacks last year, and now it is an identity. They blitz all the time now because they feel confident that they can do it. So Matt Eberflus has gone out of his comfort zone, but it's been working, and they've been managing this because they got the right players to do it, and they trust them.
I always love these stats when, you look at the sacks. Okay, you had 5 different players with at least a half a sack against Jacksonville, 6 players with at least 1 pass breakup, and the takeaways, they only had 2, but it felt like 10, Tom. I don't know. If you were to put a gun to my head and say, hey, how many it just felt like that, and here's why. Matt Eberflus, and people can say whatever they say about it, but this whole hustle thing and this hits principle, which he doesn't talk a lot about anymore because he doesn't have to, because he's got guys that adhere to it. So you don't ever hear him talk about it. But the hustle plays, and I think of the T.J. Edwards, the forced fumble on Evan Ingram on the very first play to start the second half. And that punch out after a long completion, and that led to a touchdown, and bam, the Bears are up by 18. So, Jacksonville deferred. They got the second half kickoff, and the Bears defense took one away from them. They took the possession away. That's the complimentary football we're talking about. But the other things, Chris Williams sack, the Chris Williams sack, effort sack. You got the effort plays of Kyler Gordon, and we got the effort on special teams by Daniel Hardy, ripping the ball out. And these are hungry players. T.J. Edwards, every time he hits you, you're going sideways or backwards because he's driving himself and burying you. And again, this is what makes me excited because I always envisioned a blue-collar football team. And I think they're starting to play like that. This is a blue-collar football team.
Well, the unlikeliness of some of these characters making big plays, like Billings 2 weeks ago getting a sack, Chris Williams having that sack. During the broadcast, you called out an interception, and I think it was Josh Blackwell that came up with the interception. So unlikely characters making big plays at some of the biggest times. Yeah, we know TJ, we know Trumaine, we know Montez, we know Jalen, all those guys that are marquee names. But it's the other guys that come up and make big plays because it makes it really unsettling for the next offensive coordinator because, they can focus the attention on the marquee names. But, man, you better be ready for this other group of guys because the Sanborns and the Kyler Gordons and the Chris Williams and Billings, they play
and DeMarcus Walker.
DeMarcus
Walker plays hard.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of effort sacks with DeMarcus.
It's just that not naming everybody. Yeah. But DeMarcus, he's one of my favorite guys, and I like his chirpiness, and I like the instigated enthusiasm that he has for his teammate.
All right, I want to go back to the offense and pinpoint a couple things. We're going to talk about the offensive line, Tom. There have been multiple concoctions of personnel here due to injury and or performance. If you're going to go with this, is Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins and Coleman Shelton and Matt Pryor and Darnell Wright as your first 5, with the returning Bates coming soon, hopefully health-wise, where they're at with Nate Davis. What's the next step for this offensive line? Because, Coleman Shelton had a really good game, I felt, against Jacksonville. Now, you're going to face different defenses and a much, much better front sevens coming up. But where are you at on the offensive right now? What can they do better to take that next step? And I know offensive linemen never feel like a finished product, ever, so you're never going to have a perfect game. But what do you want them to do that they're maybe lacking at the moment?
And it's going to be these next two games, production on the road. And that means you have to have an efficient running game that you get the amount of 5.2 yards per carry in the London game. I need to see that on the road. I need to see extended time of protection given to the quarterback when they have third in longer distance, second and longer distance. The difficulty of being an organized offensive line under the non-volume count conditions is one of the biggest obstacles to overcome in the maturation process of 5 guys that you have in the lineup. So if we're sitting here, UI and Jim are doing a podcast or doing the radio show in 3 weeks after the visit to Washington and then to Arizona, we're saying, wow, that offensive line was productive. Look at DeAndre Swift, the numbers he's putting up. Look at how the protection and time in the pocket that Caleb Williams has, then that's going to show me what I need to see out of the defensive line, because when they go to Minnesota and that defense, they go to Green Bay and that supportive crowd, when they go to Detroit on Thanksgiving Day, Jeff, it is going to be some of the nastiest environments that they've seen up until this point. So it is about this offensive line taking the next step in hostile environments.
I was just going to say, I think they're finally settled, Jeff. There was just so much volatility at the right guard spot, the center, and the left guard spot. And now, with it finally settling in with Coleman Shelton at center, you got Matt Pryor working at right guard due to the injury of Nate Davis, and it's kind of just settled in. And I think, as Tom always mentioned, when you have that continuity, I think that's always the best part about O-line play.
Listen to these numbers through the first 6 games of the year for Cole Kmet. On first down, he's 11 targets, 11 catches for 10 yards a pop, 2 touchdowns. No other player in the league has more than 10 catches. He's the second leading receiver on 3rd and 7+, 3rd and long. 7 for 7, almost 10 yards a catch. Tied in catches with Josh Downs of Indy and Darius Slayton, 2 wide receivers, and he's with the Giants. And then in the fourth quarter, when it's crunch time, 11 targets, 10 catches, 144 yards, 14 yards a catch, and a touchdown. My point is, if the ball's going to Cole Kmet, he's catching the football and getting something done with it. It's near perfect. He's got 1 incompletion and everything I just explained. Now, that's Caleb.
One.
That's Caleb.
Yep. You forgot one thing. He's a special teams player of the week, and he's the highest paid snapper in the league. But no, listen, I'm all for Cole, and he's productive. But, as much as you talk about the production of Cole Kmet and what he means to this offense, and we talked a little bit about Keenan and Allen getting involved in the mix last week, I would like to see a couple catches by Gerald Everett, because I just think that increases the concern of the opponent's defensive coordinator. No matter who's on the field, and when they are on the field, they have to make sure that they understand their responsibilities to that player.
Throw more footballs to Kmet. He commands it. If he's near perfect, Jeff, dial up some more. That's how it works.
He's the special teams player of the week.
It's just the difficulty of the timing of that job, and where you don't have a lot of notice. And I think it's super important, and it can't be understated that there's not a lot of people qualified to do that job. So congratulations.
This is what I want to know,
him.
Tom. Tom, why is it always the tight ends that always end up being the desperation, snappers? Every team I've been on, a backup tight end or the tight end has been the emergency snapper. I don't know why that is, but
maybe it's because they're multiple sport athletes most of the time. With Cole Kmet having pitching in his background, and there's a lot of little similarities to long snapping and pitching in terms of the arm motion. Maybe it's just the natural. But, it also grew up in a football family where his dad, Frank, preached to him the importance of just make sure that you can do this. And then his uncle, Jeff Scanina, also talked about the importance of being able to do it.
Interesting that he throws left, but he does snap right, correct?
Yeah, but your left hand on a snap is the control of the spiral and the football velocity.
All right, great stuff. Our final segment coming up. We'll look ahead with Jim Miller and Tom Thayer here on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network. This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow. Jeff, Jim, and Tom with you on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network. So as we get ready to look ahead, and we've already done what the Bears are doing, the self-scouting. That's what they did early in the week and got the rest of the week off. But over the last 14 games, the Bears are 9-5, 7-2 in their last NFC matchups. They got a 9-game home winning streak. 12 games in a row, allowing 21 points or less, and number one in takeaways since week 1 of 23. I mean, this is a team on the rise. This is a team that is dangerous and only expected to become more dangerous as Caleb Williams continues to grow. Are we in a sweet spot, Jim Miller?
I do. I think they are in a sweet spot. And, again, they've got the veteran leadership. They've got the talent. And now it's just about going to do it and how they continue to come together. I think Matt Eberflus has the heartbeat of this team. He has their ear. I never have not seen this team once not play hard or play with effort or give up or pack it in. And so I think moving forward, all gas, no brakes. It's like right where you said, Jeff, it's going in the right direction. Just keep that foot on the gas.
Jim, do you know that's a Zach Miller song? Is that why you said that?
No, it isn't.
Yeah, that's the name of his song video that he has out in the country market.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to check it out. What is he serenading now, football fans or what?
No,
he's excellent.
He's a legitimate country
music
star. Yeah, I got a video out there, and that's the name of his song. I thought you were giving our Zach Miller a little dap.
No.
I'll look ahead to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. There's so much math here. I mean, Jaden Daniels is tearing it up. Listen to what he does in the fourth quarter. He's completing 84% of his passes, and a pretty good sample size. It's not like a few. 402 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and his 10 runs of 10-plus as a scrambler tied with Kyler Murray, the next 2 quarterbacks the Bears face. So, Tom, how does that affect how the defense is going to have to play Daniels and Murray? He's number 2. Caleb is right there with 8. But Daniels and Kyler Murray behind Lamar Jackson, who's got 15 of those 10-plus yard runs, because that puts the defense on its heels.
Well, you look at the quarterbacks that the Bears have played in recent weeks, whether it's Stafford or you want to look at Andy Dalton and even Lawrence for that matter. You're more concerned about getting to a drop-back point in the backfield, so you're rushed differently than you do rush when you play against these quarterbacks with great maneuverability. Now your outside rushers have to have a wider contained rush. And so you have different thought processes about how you rush this quarterback, and then it gives an offensive line a little bit extra time to get in a proper blocking position because of the maneuverability of their quarterback. So I think the stress and the challenge is going to be on the rushers up front to either put the quarterback in an uncomfortable position or making them look for an exit strategy as soon as possible. But if you do put both of them out in the open field, you could pay for that. So I do think there's going to be a great deal of interest in how they rush, how they stay in their rushing lanes, and how they respect the pursuit of these next two quarterbacks.
Yeah, their offense is really playing well right now because of Jaden Daniels. And I've talked to a couple of coaches that have gone against him. This guy has gotten their team into the perfect play to take advantage of a defense. Todd Bowles told me, he said, I called the perfect defense, and this kid beat it because he sees it, he understands it, and he's attacking it. Right now, the Washington Commanders, they're the only team in the league. When they go for it on fourth down, they're 100%. They're 10 for 10 right now.
Wow.
This quarterback does not panic. And their defense is building. They're still giving up way too many points, but they've got the right leaders there, and Bobby Wagner and the players that they signed. The Bears should have an opportunity to run the football because they just lost Jonathan Allen in the middle. That is a big-time defensive tackle, and the Bears should have success running the ball there.
Tom, the Bears' rush defense, if they do give up something throughout the course of a game, they seem to adjust to make sure they get on it. So I'm not worried about – but – every Washington running back, and when Jaden Daniels is moving, I put him in that category, everyone has a run of 20 yards or more. They have 2, as a matter of fact. Austin Eckler, Jerry McNichols, Brian Robinson, who's got a knee injury. I don't know what his status will be, and Jaden Daniels. So they rip off explosives. So the Bears are going to have to be really on their gaps against Washington.
Yeah, they are going to have to prevent big running plays and make sure that they go to the line of scrimmage more often than not. And as much as you are concerned about explosive runs that they have, and, they're blessed with a quarterback that makes you play a wider space of defense, you've always talked about your affinity for Austin Eckler. And him as an outlet receiver, as an emergency guy, as a guy in space, that's when he is equally as explosive as you talk about the running game explosiveness. But you got to be concerned about these running backs catching when Jaden Daniels is buying some time and creating separation.
And scary Terry McLaurin, go-to guy on third down, Jim. 19 of his 29 catches have gone for a first down. So
this is a wide-open offense, and I do think Cliff Kingsbury is really doing a nice job with this quarterback. So they have weapons, and they put up points every game. They have put up points every game when you look at the Commanders.
All right, should be a great one. Again, move to a 3:25 start Chicago time because everybody loves the quarterbacks, Jim. Everybody.
Hey.
They're not flexing games for offensive guards. I'll tell you that right now.
I'm fine with Week 11 on. All NFC North games go to prime time because this could be the best division in football right now.
The top 4-point differential teams in the league all in one division. That's going to do it for us. Thanks again to former Bears running back Neil Anderson, and thanks to Jim Miller and Tom Thayer, the executive producer of the Bears Radio Network, Eric Ostrowski, Justin Pottinger in the studio, and Dan Bruley and Jordan Treadup, our Bears producers as well. Thank you for listening, everybody. This has been Bears Weekly on the new radio